flexible. Hey, everybody. Look, we this has just been extraordinary. And let me start out by saying we truly believe that this is history in the making right here. What's taking place throughout the world, obviously, looking at this is going to change millions and millions of people's lives, and it's going to happen for many, many years to come. I think that we need to give it back to Nathan and Jamie and Meredith just for putting this together. This has been incredible. Let's give them a round of applause.
And we're most excited because our law is the law of intentionality. Now, let me tell you a little bit about this law because this law truly saved, personally for me, it saved my business. And it really helped take my life to another level because this is what made me realize that, in network marketing, everybody wants a testimony, but nobody really wants to go through the test. So for us, what we're going to share with you is some of the things that we've been through and how the law of intentionality really helped us to get to where we are.
Yeah, I think what's unfair a lot of times is people have the misconception that when you have an all-star cast like this, and we don't mean that from an arrogant space, but you've got some of the best in this business, all here in Atlanta, Georgia, live, sharing the stage, and there are thousands of other people that are top of their companies as well. And I think the misconception is that people feel like this just happens to certain people. I think people feel like there's no journey. And I'm telling you right now, all of us have been through it. And the law of intentionality is you've got to recognize that it is up to you and you only to determine what you're going to get out of not just this industry, but what you're going to get out of your life. Nothing happens by accident. You've got to be in the driver's seat. I tell people a lot of times people are going through this vehicle called life and they're riding in the passenger seat and they're wondering why they don't have control over the speed. They don't have control over which turn they make, what route they're taking, when they're going to get to that destination, because they're in the passenger seat. And we're here to tell you, you've got to get out, walk around, get in that driver's seat, and make the decision that you are going to be intentional about what you're going to do. And I believe this. I believe, here, take a look at this. I believe that there's a timeline every single time somebody joins a network marketing company or network marketing business. You've got a timeline where you have a starting point, and then you've got what unfortunately happens to a lot of people. And this is by choice, whether conscious or subconscious or unconscious. You've got an ending point. Now, some of us keep going, which is why we become leaders. But in the starting point, here's what happens. That's when you get started with all these emotions like optimism,
Yep.
belief, excitement. You're ready to go. And every single day that goes by, you have to understand that if you're not succeeding, here's the reality, and this is what people need to hear. If you're not succeeding along that timeline, and everybody's timeline is different because you don't know. I heard earlier today on the stage that I quit level. Mark talked about that. You don't know when someone else's I quit level happens on that timeline. Therefore, you've got to make sure that not only are you intentional about you because you have to control your own timeline, but you've got to also be an influence to other people.
Absolutely.
So that they aren't falling through the cracks on their timeline. So I want to tell you a quick story because, again, we want to just erase that myth of people just arrive and people just start making millions of dollars
because just luck.
It doesn't happen that way. Here's what happened to me. Because sometimes it can be an incident that happens, or it can just be you make a decision to be intentional. But mine was an incident. What happened for me was I got so excited about this industry that I said, you know what? I'm going for it. I believe. I never had any doubts. I'm going to jump out here. I'm going to go for this. And I went against what all of my family and friends, and that's going to happen to people.
Right,
people
are
going
to off the cliff
and build my wings on the way down. And people thought I was crazy. People told me this would never work. People called it a pyramid scheme. You heard all that stuff, right? And that's reality because when you hear it, it's how you respond to it that's going to make the difference. Some of the closest people to you are going to be the ones that tell you this won't work, are going to be the ones that tell you that they've never heard of anybody else that has succeeded, so why would it work? Don't waste your time. And a lot of times it may come out of love. I know my parents didn't support me early on because They were just trying to protect their son. And they told me this, don't waste your time with that. And does it cost money and all this stuff? And here's the thing, I got in anyway. And I got in and I started having some success. I started having some momentum. It's probably 30 days worth of momentum.
Right,
That was
exactly.
about it. But
But it was momentum, though.
oh, it was
right?
momentum. That was 30 rocking days, right? But here's what ended up happening. I think maybe 6 months or 9 months in, I went full time. I'm quitting my job. I don't recommend that to a lot of
Yes,
people.
we don't recommend that.
Thank God I had the temperament to survive that. But what happened was I quit my job. And I said, I'm going to do this. I'm going all in. Let's roll. And I started building my business because of that momentum that month,
30
right?
days.
And what ended up taking place was reality started kicking in real quick. I'll never forget, my brother ended up moving out of our 2-bedroom apartment that we were living in. So now I've got the responsibility of covering the rent for a 2-bedroom, even though it was just me. And I'll never forget, 1 month went by. I said, you know what? I don't have enough money to pay it right now. So I'll get it next month. I'll double up next month. So that second month went by, still didn't have it. Didn't pay again.
Momentum slowed down.
Momentum was gone. And so was my little team, right? I was a one-man army at this point, but I'm all in. Now, keep in mind, all my family and friends were like, that's not going to work. So that was my motivating factor. But then the third month went by. Rent was due again. So now I had a conversation with a buddy of mine. A buddy of mine told me, look, man, he said, if they ever show up to kick you out. I said, well, who is they? He said, oh, the sheriff will come. The sheriff? Like I've done something illegal? Really? Oh, the sheriff will come. I said, okay. He said, if he ever shows up, don't answer the door. Because if he can't serve you the papers, you buy yourself some time. I'm like, okay, cool. I got that. So now I'm still trying to create this momentum, right? Because the team is gone. I'm a one-man army and I'm all in.
Rebuilding,
right? Building, right? So then what happened was, it was maybe an afternoon, 1:00 in the afternoon. I didn't invite anybody over here today. Let me see who this is. Maybe that's a prospect, right? So I go to the door, right? I get to the door, and when I look out, the first thing I see is a big hat. I'm like, what is? Then I see the badge. I'm like, oh, that time has come. So I immediately think of what my buddy told me, like, don't answer the door. So now I'm in there just quiet, like.
The law of intentionality. You were intentionally not opening.
Quiet. So what ended up taking place was he started knocking. The knocks started getting louder, and louder. And at this point, I'm thinking, I know the neighbors have got to be in the hallway wondering, what did Steve do, right? But I sat there, and it was one of the most humiliating days of my life because I knew I was being thrown out. And all I could think about was, now I'm going to have to go back and tell my parents they were right. I'm going to have to go back and tell my friends they were right, family members they were right. And I refused to do that. And that was the incident that made me become intentional about what I was going to do in this industry. And I'll tell you this, the takeaway was, I didn't know a whole lot because I was obviously still learning. These were the early stages of building our business. But I'll never forget, I said, well, I do know one thing. And this is what, for all the listeners here, and we've got leaders in here, no matter what company you're with, no matter what product you're selling, no matter what city you live in, no matter how old you are, no matter what your education is, here's what we understood. There are 3 things that have to happen. And you've got to be intentional about these 3 things in this industry. Number 1 is you've got to get customers to purchase your product, get on your service, whatever your company sells. You've got to be intentional to get customers. That's how revenue is generated, not just for the company, but for you. The other thing is you've got to build a team. You've got to find some individuals that buy into your vision and want to build something special and want to grow an organization. And then the third thing is you've got to teach those team members how to do those first 2 things.
Absolutely. And for me, first of all, Steve, thank you for sharing that story because I remember when you told me that. And for me, my story was a little bit different. When the law of intentionality showed up in my life, I didn't want it. I wasn't expecting it. And I'm at a convention, and we've all been to a convention. And for those of you who haven't been to the new conventions, it's like the Grammys. You get there and the awards. It's like the fireworks and the music is going off. You're looking for Beyonce. It's amazing. So I'm at a convention. And I'll never forget, I was one of those people. When I grew up, I was a cheerleader. I was a competitive gymnast for 10 years, and I was a cheerleader. I took it all the way up to NFL cheerleader. So I cheered all my life. I cheered for the Falcons right here in the 90s, as a matter of fact. And when I went to, so I was great at cheering people on. I mastered the art of cheering people on. So we show up at a convention, and the convention is starting and the promotions are starting. So I'm sitting in the audience and I'm cheering every time someone would walk across the stage. It didn't matter if I knew them. It didn't matter if they were in my organization. I was just the loudest one cheering because I was genuinely happy to see people succeed. Well, this was a while ago, and we had these things, I'm going to date myself a little here, called two-way pagers. Anybody remember those?
Back in the day.
And so I had this bright red one, and it started to light up. So I opened my two-way pager, and there was a text in there, and it said,
now this was somebody in your down.
Yeah, someone in my organization. Hey, Pasha, when should we line up for our promotions? Well, I'd gotten so excited about the convention that I didn't prepare for us to walk the stage and have promotions when we got there. So here I am, the leader that everybody's looking at, and they're asking me, when do we line up? Because who in our organization is walking the stage? And it wasn't one person in my organization walking the stage that weekend. And that was a low point in my life, because here I am, the leader with the lid, because I hadn't done what I needed to do leading up to the convention. And that's when I got intentional. And I made a decision at that convention. There will never be another convention in my direct sales career that when we show up, not only are we not walking the stage, but dominating the stage. So when we got back, I understood I had to put a game plan together. I knew there were three main things that I had to do as the leader of our organization to guarantee that we were going to have that type of success. So the first thing I knew is I had to become better. I had to grow as an individual. So one of the things that I realized is, if being who you are would get you what you want, you'd already have it. So we all have room to grow. So I had to work on that growth. Every single day I was reading. Every single day I was working on, how can I become better? What can I teach my team? How can I lead my team better? The next thing, I realized that I had to teach my team the law of large numbers and to not get caught up in mistakes. See, one of the biggest challenges in network marketing is you have got to learn that the yeses, when people tell you, yes, I'll try your service, yes, I'll become a partner, yes, I'll get started. Well, the yeses, they build your business. The yeses, they build your bank account. But the no's build you. And see, so many people want to skip over the no's to get to the yeses. The no's are just as important as the yeses, because that's what's going to build you. And the other thing was, the third thing, I realized that I had to find and develop leaders. And let me tell you, when you find an army of leaders, people who want it as bad as you want it, people who are willing to do the things that it takes to win, they're willing to get up early, they're willing to stay late. That's when you know without a shadow of a doubt that you found the right people. And it's not easy. I'm going to tell you right now, for many of us who've had to build an organization, one of the toughest things that you can do is find those leaders. But here's what I want to share with you. You've got to realize, you've got to understand that you got to look for those people who have a vision like yourself, the giraffes of the world. And see, the challenge is, when you're a giraffe, sometimes you have turtles in your organization that are surrounding you. And you've got this vision, and you got to realize a giraffe has a very long what? Very long neck. So a giraffe is up here and they can see into the future. They know what 10 years down the road is going to look like. They understand the promotions that are going to happen and how the lives are going to be changed. So here you are, this giraffe, and you're trying to explain your vision to all these turtles that are around you. But what we had to realize is we had to find some people who had giraffe-like vision like ourselves, and stop trying to take the vision that we have for people who just couldn't see it. And when you realize that you can now transpose that vision onto people and you're developing those leaders, that's when the organization takes off. So that was my epiphany at that convention.
And I'll tell you this, guys. Here's the thing: what this industry can do. This is the great equalizer. It doesn't matter what your race, your gender, your background. None of that matters. Network marketing gives everybody that opportunity to win. And I think that what we need to do, and I love the fact that this entire project is talking about growth. This entire project is talking about getting better, pouring into other people, believing into other people. Here's the thing you got to realize: it starts right there with that person in the mirror.
Yes, it does.
Starts with that person. That's the conversation you got to have first. And then, if all of us are honest with ourselves, if we really look at where people's families are today, because that's one of the highest priorities. I mean, people love their families. If you have children, if you have a spouse, you have parents, you got to start at home, and you've got to start to improve and be intentional about what's going to happen in your family. If right now all the bills aren't being met, then that's something you have to fix. Don't wait for anybody else to do that. Step up as the leader and be the one to fix it, because you've got the vehicle called network marketing to do that. And then when you fix your family, then you're able to fix your community. When you fix your community, then you're able to fix your city. Fix the city, you can fix the state.
Absolutely.
Fix the state, you can fix the country.
And
Fix the
eventually
country,
you can
change the world. But it starts with you. Because here's the thing I know. I love the fact that we're hearing about growth. That means going north, going up, getting bigger, getting better, right? Here's the thing. I don't believe that in business and in life, I don't believe there's such a thing as being stagnant. Because just as there are 15 laws of growth, you better believe. Now, I don't know all of them. Maybe John and I need to get together and do a co-author deal here, do the 15 laws of shrinkage, right? But here's the thing, just like there are laws of growth, I'm willing to bet you there are some laws of going the other way.
Yes.
And most people have mastered those. Most people practice those laws every day. There's one in particular that is the exact opposite of the law that we're talking about here today. Our law is the law of intentionality. But there's a law called the law of diminishing intent.
Yes.
The law of diminishing intent, let me tell you what that means. Every single day that you intend to do something and you don't get it done, the intention to do it diminishes.
Absolutely.
And so many people are doing that every day. They're getting ready to think about hopefully one day, maybe getting started.
Yes.
Right? And so every single day that you don't do what you're supposed to do, you start losing the desire to do it. So what does that mean? Are you staying stagnant? No. You're actually going backwards. And so we've got the opportunity and the ability to show people that regardless of who you are and where you come from, if you are intentional about your success, you can win.
Absolutely.
And I like to sometimes go off script, which Pasha knows. She's been around me long enough to know, and I'm going to wrap it up with this, because this law of intentionality goes outside of business, right? Because the very first part of intentionality for me, she had no idea I was going to talk about this, but I am. This is when I first got in the industry, right? So it's related to network marketing. But when I got started, I was single, right? So I'm at the convention, right? And I'm
not sure where he's going with this,
I'm at
but
the
okay.
convention, and all of a sudden, I see this young lady walking through the convention hall at the company convention. And there's a crowd of people behind her. And now she caught my eye just being who she was. But I see this crowd of people, and then all of a sudden, I see her stop. And one of her team members grabbed a chair, comes over there and puts a chair down. They help her up like she's the queen, right? She steps up on the chair. She turns around, the crowd starts growing. She's doing like this, boom, boom, boom. It's doing all the hand gestures and stuff, and everybody's doing the nods. So I'm looking over there like, who is this? And my buddy leaned over and gave me a nudge and said, you need to go talk to her. I said, nah, because I was just getting started, right? I'm like, nah. She seems like she's got her stuff together, so I need to get my stuff together. So I want to get my stuff together, so by the time she knows who I am, we both bringing something to the table, right? So I became intentional right then and there that one right there, that's mine. That's mine. So look, my motivation wasn't this. My motivation was this. So I was out here talking to people. I'm piquing interest. I'm getting customers. I'm doing home meetings. I'm doing all kind of stuff. We didn't even have webinars, but I would have done one. I was doing everything because I knew that once I crossed that stage, I didn't have to introduce myself. I crossed that stage and she came over there. This is a true story. She came over there like, congratulations. I'm like, thank you very much. About 2 years later, we were on the beaches of Montego Bay, Jamaica, saying I do. And now we got 4 beautiful children, and I am honored to share my life and share this stage with you. Guys, that's our time. I'm Steve Carter. This is Pastor Carter. God bless you guys. Let's change the world together. Let's change the world together.